Hello, welcome back to another video, and today we will be learning about C-Sharp's data types, which is the most essential parts of any programming language. So let's begin. Okay, without further ado, let's open our Visual Studio and let's create a new project. We want a console app for C-Sharp, so that has been selected, and let's go for next. Then data types. Let's give the project name as data types and next. And again, we are selecting framework .NET 9.0, standard term support, and that's great. Okay. And we wait until Visual Studio creates project for us. Okay. So as of now, we have data types and dependencies, all of this. So now, let's begin. What are data types? What are data types? So data types are basically containers to hold data. I would say that, but data types, first let's understand what's a variable is. Okay, what's a variable? So to note it, variables are basically containers that holds up this data that the frame first thing. Anything like for a real life example, if you have a jar and you put some rice in it, let's say, then the jar is a variable for holding the rice, and the rice is itself is a data. Okay, so we can put any kind of data in a variable. However, variables have special customization. What does this mean? That a variable cannot have an independent type of data. Like you cannot put, just for a real life example, you cannot put rice and dal together in a variable, okay, in a chart. I mean, you can do it, but that doesn't sound very good. After all, it will become khichdi, porridge, something like that. You cannot just short them out. So for that, what we do, we have special variables. We have actually have separate variables or separate data, right? Like uh, continuing with the same example, you have a jar for rice, you have a jar for dal or lentils, you have jar for chickpea, you have jar for cookies, etc. and etc. Now, when you do it, label the variables in such a way that I would say when you identify what that variable will do, the now, future, and in future, you're basically giving an identity to that variable. That this variable will only contain this kind of data, right? Like this jar, a particular jar will hold a particular kind of, let's say, some cooking material, masala, rice, lentils, and so. So for in that way, for identifying variables, identifying those variables, we assign them data types. Okay, so data types are basically labeling a variable into what kind of category, what category of data we will fill into that variable. Okay, and those data types could be numerous. And a possibility of any data type is infinite. However, there are some kind of segregation which we will learn here. Okay, so let me just uh, summarize the whole point of how data variables are, what are variables, and what are data types right now. So variables are basically places or containers in which you hold some kind of data. And what kind of data that the variable will hold is defined by its data type. Okay, like an integer, or let's say, let's continue with the kitchen example again. If a variable or a jar is labeled that this will contain rice, then you can only hold rice in that. Just for the sake of now, just for the sake of simplicity, we just have a static data type. Okay, that means a single data type. If it has been assigned, we will hold that kind of data only. Now, if you have a jar labeled as dal, we will only hold dal in that jar or in that variable, whatever we say. So that's the whole idea of it. Now, what kind of data types C# uses? What kind of data type C# uses? We have int. Let's begin with byte. We have short. We have int. We have long. And then we have unsigned. Integers. Then we have factors, which are basically decimals. So we go with float. Then we have double, which is bigger than float. You don't have to remember all these kind of what kind of range they hold. You just have to remember. Remembering the range of what they are using is like a very intricate thing, and you don't want to remember at the very beginning stage. You just want to understand what data type you must use, and we will go through each one of one by one. Then we have decimal, which is kind of an assimilation of float and double in the same data type. Okay, these are all mathematical data types. Then we have bool, which is a boolean value, which holds basically 0 or 1, true or false, anything else. Then we have string. Okay, string is itself a data type basically, and we use it for number strings. Now these are all primitive classes. Primitive data types. Okay, then we have the user defined data type. User defined data type or complex data type. The number one is struct. Sorry, the number one is enum, or what we write it as enum. Okay? Then we have structs. Those structs are very rarely used in C#, but they are used numerously. But here again, we are in an object-oriented programming language. C# is an object-oriented programming language, so we use class. Okay, so class is the most used structure. So let's begin. Now let's begin defining what they are used for. So byte holds from 0 to 9, just single integer, right? Single integer types. I'm not sure, but they hold just single byte of data, and these are all numerical data. Short has 0 to 225. The integer has some around 2 lakhs or 2 crores of range. Then we have long, which is bigger than int. Then we have float, which introduces floating numbers. Like, let me just go with integer first. It has this data type like something like this. Let's say 8, 9, like this. Then we have long, which is again, it holds the data of int as well, but it is specified for longer datas and numbers. Yes. Then we have float, which introduces floating numbers, 12.3, 12.5, 100.1000.0. Then we have decimal, which is Again, 12.6 suppose. Yes, these are all double. And you can round these numbers as well using mathematical libraries in C sharp. Then we have decimal, which is an assimilation of float and double. So again, these two come inside this float and double. Okay. Then we have boolean, which is true or false at any point of time. Okay. Then we have string, anything like my name, Rajat, say Amisha, let's say Daniel, let's say anything like a number, category, and also you can put up CNET, anything. Okay, so we have numerous types. Okay? Now, enums are special type of data structures, and they assimilate like enumeration. They hold enumerations. Okay, and how do you get the hash? How do we define it? We define it something like this. Public enum. Let's give a name to the enumeration. Suppose lentils or kitchen items. Items. Then we have enumerations like rice, lentils, utensils, water, etc. Now, what C sharp does behind the scene is that it assigns this each value to a numeric short. That rice is assigned to 1, rice is assigned to 0, lentils is assigned to 1, utensils are assigned to, excuse me, water is assigned to 3, and so on. So whenever we use this, C sharp basically uses the behind the scene integer for processing. So these are basically used to increase the readability of the program, and most of the time we will use enum for increasing the readability. You can definitely hard code the data, but instead of hard coding this integer values, you can always use this placeholder for signing and using this value. Now, interestingly, you can also assign this picture, but C# won't allow it because, as I said, behind the screen it's always an integer assigned to each of the elements. Okay, so this is enum. Now, structure very rarely used in C#, but we will definitely use them. Right now, we are not using it for the sake of simplicity. And then we have classes also. We won't declare them right off right now because they are complex topics, and when we will go to oops in C#, we will learn about these. So this is all about the data types. You don't have to by heart them and what to do with all this data types. Slowly and gradually, when you will learn, follow these codes, you will definitely find how to use them and where to use them. This is it for now, and in the next video, probably we will be learning about the user input and user output using C#. So that's it for this video. Thank you guys. Bye bye.